Despite scorching temperatures across the town, the club have yet to set the transfer window alight. 2 more renewals today have allowed the squad to fill out further, but the Royals still have work to do in the transfer market. Welcome to a very hot, very sweaty episode 422 of the Tilehurst End podcast. My name is Ben Thomas. I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Rossi Webber.
Rossi Webber? Is that with a Y or an I?
Probably go Y.
Okay. I'm not sure I like that. If you said it with an I in football, I'd kind of be all right with it. I do actually have I'll pull it out at some point. I have an awful Reading shirt that says Rossi with an I on the back of it. But with a Y, that's a little, that might be a bit much for me. Sorry. But hello, everyone. I'm back. It's hot everywhere.
Speaking of shirts, have you got the new home shirt yet?
I don't. I haven't actually. That's not on the club. I just want to make very clear after Dale was on last week. I just haven't purchased it yet. But I just saw the training gear come out today too. So now I might have to wait until that's available on the site as well. And then, you always, when you've got international shipping to think about, you bundle things and then you buy in bulk, so that's how it goes. But no, I don't have that yet. I'm looking forward to seeing what the full lineup of shirts looks like. But have you worn yours more than just for the podcast since?
Nah,
not
okay. No,
just sits up.
I was trying to look on, I can say, and we're not going to get done, aren't we? Like Vinted and eBay for like older Reading shirts, but I couldn't find any. So I'm still scouting around. If anyone's got anything they don't want potentially that might be good. I'm just wearing a basic Puma tee today.
That's
just
nice.
A basic Puma tee. You've got the third shirt on from a couple of seasons ago. I still think the current home shirt or the new home shirt will be cult. I really do. I really like it. I really like it, and I'm excited about the second and third. But yeah, the training gear looks flames, as the kids would say.
I do like it, and I very much like that Ryan's gone ahead and put Tiv in the clothing review video for it. I think that Tiv is obviously well positioned with his Priv Tiv TikTok account to be doing the kit review. So honestly, I just want more of that kind of content. Get me Tiv Rush-esha now that he's signed his contract for this season. Let me see him ranking and rating every piece of clothing that the club puts out. Honestly, there should be a Fanatics partnership there for him.
Well, we're gonna talk about Tiv, and if you haven't checked out his TikTok channel, it's I'm told it's good.
I like it a lot.
I'm not as young as Ross, so I don't really do TikTok, but I've seen clips that other people have shown me, and it's pretty decent. Talking of decent, thanks as always to our decent sponsors, ZC Said Films, who decently sponsor us on this hopefully decent podcast. Big thanks to the Amazons, who have given us a stunning track to use. Indeed. My Blood, which everyone should know by now. We're sticking with that. We're going with it. We've got the new jingles from Wim, Mr. Daniel Wimbush, for those people that don't like nicknames. So it's all going off. We're just improving all the time. We're trying to get better and better and better. I'm in the garden, swap locations for this one, and we're gonna crack on with episode 422 in what is essentially a recap of the last 9-10 days, I guess. So quick break, and we'll be back. Right, Ross. Where shall we begin? Let's have a little look. Okay, so we've got, for those people that don't know or have forgotten, in recent weeks, we've re-signed John Ryan, Michael Stickland, John Clark, Andy Yeardom, Jarrell Dorset, as Ross calls him, and Tiv Rush-esha have both signed today, mostly on one-year deals. Taken a little while to get those announced and published. Ross, are you happy with those players, A, re-signing, and B, sticking around for another year at least?
Yeah, I think if we take it as the, looking at the whole group that were offered contracts and who's actually coming back, I think it's pretty encouraging that, the two players that have gone in Mbenge and Wareham are players that Mbenge was, able to move on to a higher league. And so good for him. And Wareham, maybe wanted to start, maybe wanted to be guaranteed to start, and maybe that's why he switched. The rest of the signings, getting that done, and Dorset today talking about, being excited to re-sign and this being his home and everything. Yeah, I think there's good signs that like a lot of the players are excited to be back and excited for what the future might hold for Reading. I was really excited, today. I've already mentioned the video with where Tavonge Rush-esha, one of these new re-signings today, is kind of helping advertise the new training kit. But who's also in that video with him is a smiling, well-looking Harvey Nibbs, who looks ready to go for next season. There may be more offers or things for him that the club has to turn down, but it's just exciting to see players like Wing and Nibbs back mixing up with these players who have re-signed and clearly ready and excited for the future. So yeah, I mean, look, there are other clubs who have done other things out there. Every club's in a different situation, and looking through some clubs, they've done a lot of their transfers. They've gotten a lot of their transfer business out of the way early. I think there was maybe a sense that we might do some of that as well. But what we have gone and done early is gotten the important players re-signed, starting with Wing and Pereira, and then kind of filled out the depth of the squad. And now we've got a much better sense with 2 more months to go of this transfer window of what kind of squad we actually need to build. It's not a sense of, well, we don't know if we're going to have Wareham, but let's go out and buy this striker anyway. It's like, okay, now we know we don't have Wareham, so maybe we can look for a player who can do his sort of hold-up play, but also go and look for, a player who might be more of a finisher in the box or something like that. So in any case, I think that all clubs do things in slightly different orders. But there have been a lot of players who have really served us well over the past few years. Dorset obviously had a very injury hit season last year. But the season before was really, really good, really important for Reading. So I think there's just a lot of players here who are being, given their due reward after, a tricky couple of seasons for the club. And I'm excited that they did get these re-signings done to keep the core of this team that have improved together, basically. So, yeah, we're losing a few players, obviously. But, other than Bindon that we've known about since January, I think only Mbenge is a real, a frustrating one, so to speak.
I mean, if you start from the back, obviously we haven't even mentioned the signing of Jack Stevens, who's come in from Cambridge on a 2-year deal. Mm-hmm. We're pretty much done with goalkeepers. I can't imagine we'd be in for a goalkeeper now with Joel Pereira, Jack Stevens, and Tom Norcott. Sort of third choice really, and cup goalkeeper. We then got Garcia, Dorset, who signed today, and John Clark, who's re-signed. They would come in left back, kind of sitting there. The centre-back pairing of O'Connor and Stickland, which, looking at it, you'd probably look to get at least one, possibly 2 more centre-backs, just to add a bit more depth there. And then right back, pretty well stocked with Abrafa, Yiadom, and John Ryan re-signing as well. So,
so Ben, can I jump in there just while you're talking about the back line? Because you mentioned Yiadom and then you mentioned, John Ryan re-signing. I think John Ryan re-signing, to me, and Yiadom coming back, those two I was kind of looking at together because they signal kind of 2 things to me. One, that they were excited about John Ryan, before he went down with injury this season. I think there were some really good things written about him. But also kind of signals to me that Yiadom, for his continuing career at Reading, maybe moved inside to the centre-back position. I think that with Abrafa, with Rush-esha, and with Ryan at right back, that is probably, I would be surprised if we don't start the season with one of those 3 out at right back. And there's even Michael Craig if he does come back. So yeah.
I would imagine that given that there was a raft of announcements today and we've not seen some of those players in training photos, whether that's tactical or whether they're just not there, I would be surprised if Michael Craig was coming back. I'm not sure about Big Kelvin yet, or Long Kelvin, or whatever we called him. There's still a few. Obviously, Carney, we're still waiting on in terms of news for him, but contract expiry was today, 1st of July. So, it's no surprise that there was some announced today. I just think with those players that we got question marks over, would have been done and dusted by now, I think. So, we're looking at the midfield in terms of Wing, Savage, Nibbs, Elliott, and now Rush-esha. Talent-wise, put my neck out and say it's one of the best in the division, if not the best. depth wise. I think we still need a little bit of width there, and then obviously up front is non-existent. So there is still a lot of work to be done. You brought up other clubs. I think you're looking at other clubs like Wycombe, looking at Huddersfield to some extent as well, that are clubs within our kind of pool. I think I called it a pond earlier. I meant pool. Don't know why.
Yeah, pond's fine as well. We are a podcast that operates on both sides of a pond, so I think to say pond is fine. So
but I think there is a school of thought with the signings or lack of signings that Rob Cohen, we can only go off what we've been told firsthand, and he was excellent 3 weeks ago when we had him on. Very, very positive, very, very clear on the direction. I think the issue for some people is that he keeps saying the same things, and yet we haven't probably got results that the club would have expected by now in terms of the transfer market. In terms of a traditional Reading window, we're still well within the bracket of when players come in. Historically, we've not had players come in much before, the start to middle of July. But I think the constant sound bites that he might be coming out with across a range of media. He was interviewed again this weekend in the I paper, which is quite a big paper here. Don't know why I'm talking to you like you don't know, but you do.
I do know about that. Yeah. But no, it's fair enough for our American listeners.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're listening in Woodley or something. No offense to people in Woodley, but if you've got that paper and you're putting yourself out there in national media, it just sort of ups the ante a little bit. So I think there is not a split in people, but there is this kind of thing. Well, hold on a minute, you said you were going to do this, and actually we're 3 weeks down the pipe and you still haven't brought those players in. And we all know that football is a very complicated business, but the kind of the slow release of these players either signing up or being publicly exposed to being signed up, I think has led to a little bit of frustration from some people. From my point of view, I still think this will work out. I still think we'll have a very competitive, certainly starting 11 and hopefully squad by the time we go to Lincoln in the first game of the season. But, realistically, when you look at other clubs within our pool, it is a bit, disheartening is the wrong word, but a little bit frustrating. And obviously we go to Hungerford on Saturday. So, you want to have some sort of team, but to be able to put an 11 on the pitch. So we're still well within the bracket, but it's disappointing that we've had certainly in Bengay join QPR of all people.
I think this is again though just like another one of those million cuts from being relegated, and being relegated doesn't hurt you. I mean, it does hurt like right at the moment that you actually get relegated. Of course it hurts. What am I talking about? I actually drank a shot and beer chaser combination called the Pit of Misery that night that we got relegated from the championship. So
I thought you were going to say when Mbenge left. I was like, all right.
No, not for Mbenge. But it's another one of those like little cuts, isn't it? That just hurts you about being relegated. We're not a championship club anymore. We could lose a player to QPR. We could lose a manager to Hull, and then they bin him off before the season's even done. This is just kind of one of those things. I'll say I'm not really concerned at this time. I think that this club has had a lot more to do than some of the other clubs who are going to be kind of expected by the League One media to be where we are at the end of the season. And I think a lot of like expectations and how much has been done comes down to where do you think we're going to be at the end of next season? What kind of club are we supposed to be? I think a lot of people are probably thinking that we should be at least playoffs next season, which I can understand. I'll definitely be predicting playoffs or higher, depending on how excited I get when we do the preseason predictions and things like that. And I definitely understand like wanting to have a bit more of a coherent team together before, the first couple preseason friendlies. But I do also think it gives us a chance to take a look at some of the players who are almost ready to jump up from the academy last year. Like is O'Kine Peters able to play with the full first team? And, kind of giving us some width, giving us more forward play to replace kind of what's gone with Wareham. I think that, these first couple friendlies, they're very, they're not against the highest quality of opposition, with all respect to Hungerford Town. So it is a chance to get some of those academy players in and see who's worth keeping around for the preseason. Something I'd kind of want to see. And obviously like the last few years for us shouldn't be the standard to hold ourselves up to. But I'd like to see kind of who we had start the first couple of preseason friendlies over the last few years to see if we, in general, have been prepared for them by this point or not. But in any case, I do think the clubs had more to do. We basically had to put together a new board. New partners have come on board, since Coig and Trustclair have taken over. And, Carey obviously has been in place for longer, has probably had recruitment goals in place for longer, as has Noel Hunt, I'm sure. But they probably didn't know what budget they were going to have for this season until about a month ago, maybe. So, working that kind of stuff is definitely, another thing that I imagine the club is having to handle that other clubs didn't necessarily have to handle. I think in the case of Huddersfield too, with respect, their season was over 3 weeks before the season actually ended. Ours ended on the last week of the season, a couple of, literally on the last kick of the season, basically. So I just think, it takes a little bit longer. If it takes us a little bit longer, I won't be super surprised, but I'm still pretty confident that we'll be in a good place by the end of the season. Are there any of the actual signings or re-signings that you wanted to focus on? What am I saying wrong about Dorset? You say Dorset?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like Somerset.
You just sound like you're from the West Country when you say it.
Okay. Dorset. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
You got more accents than a international airport. Honestly, it's crazy. Absolutely
Very
crazy.
Good. Very good.
Who do I want?
Jack Stevens is interesting.
Yeah, but I just take it with a pinch of salt when everyone's saying that. You look at how Hearts fans were with Joel Pereira, and he's the best goalkeeper in the division now. So, all these Cambridge fans going, "Oh, I would have driven him myself." Blah 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 blah. Like, it's by the by. We needed a backup goalkeeper. Norcott's not ready. Might as well be Jack Stevens. He won't be on a huge wage. And look,
his numbers are better than David Button's, if you're wondering. That's kind of why when I look at it and I'm like, this is fine. He's more of a long kicker than anything else, so he's not going to be doing our tippy-tappy fancy stuff at the back. But I mean, he's going to play FA Cup and League Cup and stuff like that to start off with. So we'll get a good look at him before he's playing anything serious, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think he just, again, I always say it, but once they come in the club, you've got to get beyond the players. Whether they come with a good rep or not. There's so many people out there that think they're the next scout and they know what they're doing, and they think, oh, this player will be good and whatever. But you never know. And he won't play very much, as you say. He won't be number one. He knows that. He's fine with that. We crack on and we get on with filling the goalkeeping department, which is what we've done. My burning question at the moment is whether or not Michael Stickland can go straight into the team as a number one centre back.
Yeah.
I like what I've seen of him already, but there is as with young players, there is a rawness there, and I wonder whether they are, as a club, seriously trying to get in more centre backs to be able to ease him in, to allow him to play in the many cup games that we're going to have. MK Dons and Swindon, at least, by the way, and the Virtue Cup or whatever it's called these days. So, there is a kind of a question in my mind as to whether or not he is going to be the number one centre back, or number two centre back rather, alongside Paudie O'Connor. So, I can
give you a bit on that if you like. I think that's an interesting one. I was happy to see Stickland sign. I think that John Clark and John Ryan signing, those are also important academy signings, kind of as you saw from them getting, a little bit of special treatment, the PR treatment as they came through and got their contract signed. But Stickland got his own, and that doesn't surprise me. He played a few games, obviously, last year. And I think that he was young and he didn't look incredible, but the kind of thing he reminded me of, not to this level, was kind of what Tyler Bindon looked like in his early League One appearances. He's a player who'd be getting through a lot more short passing than Paudie, if he is going to go straight into the lineup. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he does start a few of the games in August, because I think that a lot of the time the lineup that you see in August is so different from what the regular lineup looks like by the end of the season. And Benge and Bindon, of course, came through in the second half of Bindon's first season there. So, but in general, what you're going to see from Stickland is a decent amount of duels won. I think he's going to probably have a game in there, kind of like, again, we talk about this all the time, but Bindon with Blackpool, where he was beaten in the air over and over again. Stickland, as I kind of expect from a younger player, is so far winning more, along the ground than he is in the air. But more experienced players in the air often do end up winning more. But he gets himself, in front of a lot of shots as well. So in general, he gets to a good amount of volume, or he did in the kind of appearances that he got this season. I think that Stickland may be ready to go for August at least, and you can go from there. But I would definitely want to bring in probably one more center back at least. I think you're trying to replace Bindon and Mbenge here, and I think that in Paudie, O'Connor, you've kind of replaced one of them, but you need to go out and get a fully ready to go League One, can play 46 games if needed center back for sure. I would still have that on my list.
Yeah, I mean, they've obviously got targets. It's pretty evident they've missed out on targets for whatever reason. I would have imagined that they had a contingency plan for Mbenge not staying, because I think we all said at the end of the season it didn't feel like he was going to stay. Whereas the other players, it did. I mean, the Lewis wing extension kind of came out of nowhere, but, Joel Pereira, there was a question mark over him, but it felt more likely. And I think we said this on the pod at the time that he was going to stay, and obviously he did. And Benge's decided to go to, well, he couldn't have picked a worse team, could he, quite frankly? But, that's his decision. Crack on, see you later. I think realistically, we are still looking at the centre backs. I'd be gobsmacked if we didn't have at least 3 strikers lined up. You're going to have to get those from somewhere. And given that there was quite a few attackers that left the kind of the under 18s, under 23s, or under 21s, or whatever you want to call them, we're really short in those areas. Really, really short. So, there is still time. As Rob said on the pod a couple of weeks ago, what does it run till August the something? September the 1st, is it?
I thought September the 1st. Yeah. I think if you're going to have any department of your team left to build at this stage, I'd rather it be the attackers. I feel like there's always wingers worth about 5 goals hanging around until October, let alone September 1st. There's also Brandon Barkers out there that you don't want, but it just feels like there's more stock of serviceable forwards or wingers. And look, we're not exactly replacing a powerhouse strike force. We've been without Sam Smith since January now. This isn't necessarily a team that's set up to score tons and tons of goals. It's a team that's hard to beat. It's a team that picked up, a good unbeaten run in the back half of the season, whereby 6 of those 10 were draws, I think. So, it's not the most free scoring team in the world. And I think that any kind of any player kind of breaking out next season could look like quite an improvement for the attacking corps, even if it isn't the most exciting season ever. Like, if we have a striker come in new and score between 10 and 15 goals this season, I think a lot of people will be okay with that. It'd be a higher return than Wareham got us. Obviously, losing Smith was a blow, but it now seems that he, like Mbenge, is going to play championship football next season. So to a certain degree, it is another one of those annoying cuts that you get from being a League One team and being relegated. But yeah, I'm glad that we have I think that, like we said, we do think we need another centre back, and I still think, as I have for the past 2 years, that we need a new left back. Even if Andre Garcia is looking pretty promising. But I do think that, if we're going to play the 4-3-3 again, there's a pretty solid base here. And the forward line, like you say, is definitely in need of serious reinforcement, but I'd rather have the forward line left than anything else. One little vulnerability that I don't think necessarily gets spoken about nearly as much. If Lewis Wing goes down for the season in game 3, I don't think there's a replacement really in the team for him right now, and not necessarily. Obviously, in terms of quality, there's not a replacement. I just mean in terms of his specific role.
Why
there
game
isn't
3?
anyone. Huh?
Why
Just, I
game?
just, well, just, I'm just thinking like, if the entire plan for the season goes out the window after like a few, not even like, 500 minutes in, that's kind of the scenario I'm imagining.
I mean, you're basically saying that, well, technically the third game of the season
Yeah.
is Portsmouth away in the
Okay.
cup.
Cool. So if
The
Lewis
league
Wing,
game is
yeah,
Wimbledon at home.
right. So if his ear explodes, and he can't play again for another like year or whatever, it's not, again, the quality of losing Lewis Wing, any team would in League One would hurt from that. The thing that I'm saying is, I don't know if we have another single pivot six ready to go who can play right there in the middle of that sort of 2-3 build up structure. And if we can't build up, we can't do anything. So I have some concerns about the need to find a really quality sort of replacement for Lewis Wing in case he goes down. I don't know if that would be a priority for the club though.
Why are you not just saying get injured? You're saying going down like he's a submarine or something.
Yeah, I mean, he's going down, and then I'm using the periscope to work out which one of his ears exploded. So, there you go.
I don't know. That's a contingency plan with a contingency plan, isn't it?
It is,
have
yeah.
we got the ability to do that? I don't know. I've no idea.
Fair. And you know what? We don't have depth anywhere, do we? That's the whole effing problem in the first place.
Yeah,
so,
exactly right.
Anyway.
Moving away from the pitch, you will have seen that the fixtures came out, and I can exclusively reveal on this pod that we play every team twice, which will blow people's minds, but we do.
I was concerned. Yeah. I
never really get excited about the fixture list because it's just like a foregone conclusion, right? I think had you told me in March that we'd be getting a fixture release for League One, I'd be like, fantastic, double thumbs up. But now it's like, well, we're in the league, we crack on with it. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's very little point looking beyond August. But just a recap: Lincoln away, first game of the season on the 2nd. Huddersfield at home, that's the first home game of the season. Portsmouth, as I just mentioned, in the Cup, Carabao Cup, as it is still known this year, the League Cup.
Yep.
That's round 1. Wimbledon at home. Bolton away on a Tuesday night at the Tough Sheet Community Stadium. Careful how you say that. Wickham away. Ooh, spicy. And then Port Vale at home right at the very end of August on the 30th. Big month. That is a lot of footy ball to play.
It is. Big ups to Port Vale being back.
Yeah, sorry. Good luck to them. Yeah, good luck to them.
But anyway, you said
they'll be back.
Games.
Yeah, 6 league games is a lot, isn't it?
It's a lot. It's a big start.
I feel like it starts earlier this year. It's normally like the second weekend in August, but I don't know. That's a lot of games. It's a lot of games.
It's tough, like you say, to even know if it is a hard start, between now and then, because anything can happen, maybe Wickham are having a playoff hangover or whatever, and they're not playing so well. Port Vale could come out the traps flying and could be playing better than Wickham at that point, but then finish 20 points behind them. So it's always hard in August. It's like I was saying, like you see starting lineups from games in August that just look nothing like, what you actually come to expect as the season goes on. So yeah, I was a bit bored to see that we get West Ham under 21s again in the Car Cup. I was like, come on, give me someone new, give me some new kids to loan and then not play.
Well, we have got European Cup winners Spurs on the 19th of July at the Stade d'SCL, and Angela Spurs, which is very, very disappointing because I was well up for seeing him.
And you were well up for Big Ange at the SCL. Yeah, no mates. Yeah. No, unfortunately.
They're coming down with their new manager, Thomas Frank. Interesting appointment for them. Tickets are available now. I think they're in all stands, actually. I think it should be quite a big... It's a bit of a draw, isn't it? In a way.
It is, yeah. And we played at their stadium a few years back, I remember, in a pre-season friendly too. So similar pre-season friendlies a lot of the time, I feel like. But this will be a good one. It's good to, they have a pretty... I mean, all Premier League teams are pretty deep now, right? So it'll be good to kind of, have the boys test themselves against that opposition. Reading were obviously really good in pre-season last year. They beat Hull. apart from the Cardiff game, but they were still in that game, at least. And CBC played in that game. So the less said about that, the better.
Yeah, it's probably the beginning of the end for him, bless him, in August or July or whenever it was. I remember watching it. Good God, man, what are you doing?
Yeah. It doesn't bode well for you if the beginning of the end starts in July when your season goes until May, does it really? But hey, what can you do? Yeah.
Other news off the pitch: Ross Keston of Aliyah Capital Partners has joined the club. I went and had a look on LinkedIn. You on LinkedIn, Ross?
Yes, I think somewhere.
Oh yeah,
I think I've got 2 LinkedIn profiles. So
all right, show off.
Find me. Yeah.
I will. I flipping will now. Don't you worry about that. By the end of this pod, you'll have a little connection request.
All right. Do you write about your daily routine in there? Do you?
No, I don't actually. Honestly,
Okay.
some people in education on LinkedIn are insufferable.
Yeah.
They are absolutely insufferable, as most people on LinkedIn are. Actually,
yeah, I was going to say that's what LinkedIn's for anyway. So yeah.
Anyway, Aliyah Capital Partners, we're proud to share that our CEO, Ross Keston, has officially joined the board of directors at Reading Football Club. This milestone marks another step in Aliyah Capital Partners' long-term commitment to global football, who I think have just signed a deal with Maccabi Haifa, the Tel Aviv.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
As part of our recent acquisition of a stake in Reading FC, Ross's appointment reflects both our confidence in the club's future and our intent to play an active role in its growth on and off the pitch. We're honoured to join the board under the leadership of CEO Rob Couig, our valued partner with whom we share a strong, unified vision for Reading's next chapter. And then Keston himself said, we see Reading as a foundational asset within our multi-club strategy. Reading is a special club with deep roots, loyal supporters, and untapped potential. We're here to build something meaningful, and I'm honoured to be part of that journey and this community. It's quite a big statement, isn't it, to get someone of that stature, based in Miami, Florida, by the way, onto the board of directors. What do you make of that overall, Ross? Like, are you indifferent? Are you happy? You're a bit sad?
I mean, it's always a little bit. I'm confused, and my ears keep perking up now because now that there's a member of staff called Ross there as well. Like every time you said that there, my name just called to me. How do I?
When it was rumored, I did say quite hilariously on social media that the last thing I need is another American called Ross. Honestly, I could tell they didn't say it with their faces, but certainly with their emojis and their comments and their likes, I could tell people were just roaring with laughter about that.
Yeah, of course. I'm not even American, but whatever. How do I feel about it? I guess the phrase that stood out to me there was multi-club. That's a loaded term in football these days, and we'll wait to see how that pans out. As it relates to Reading and other clubs, obviously. Look, I think that bringing in more partners is something that I kind of expected Couig to do because it's what he did at Wickham. From what I remember, the current owner of Wickham, who Couig sold to, I believe was an investor as well that Couig had brought in. So, and I apologize if I'm wrong about that, but I think this seems to be part of the strategy of how he approaches things. He knows that he needs more resources available to him. If they do, Aliyah partners have experience with managing, football teams, then I think that's only, that's only good that more experience comes through. Where you want to be sure things are going in a positive direction is making sure that you're not like a Watford or someone who's just taking offshoots from the bigger parent clubs or anything like that. But I think that there's no point trying to suggest that before we see something like that happening. In any case, I think that this seems to be pretty close to what Couig seems to do based on his track record so far. And more resources is good. I don't think the club are going to go out and spend oodles of cash again, because we've seen that has had a pretty negative effect on our league status as well as the club itself. But you always need more resources to do. I think there's going to be a lot of things that Kurg's talked about wanting to do for the club and the community off the pitch as much as on it this year, and that takes funding as well. So good to. I think it's, again, this is kind of one of the things that I think has kind of been delaying us versus other clubs, is that we're basically putting together a new board and a new order of operations at the club as well as building for next season. And this is just one example of those things.
Final piece of the recap. Sad news, really, given how much they gave to the club, last season, is that Pedro Bruno and Shelley Strange have been removed, dismissed. They're not part of the women's side moving forward. Peter Matthews, who has been incredible with the women's coverage, the women's team coverage on our site, and I know has got involved, literally with the team as well, has written a fantastic article which you can find across our social media, but also on the website as well. It's a tricky one, because my first thought was, oh my God, they're getting rid of the women's team. And then I kind of started to calm down and then realized that it was probably because there might be new investment coming in and people might want to do things in a different way. Whichever way you spin it, Pedro and Shelley and the rest of the team did wonders to keep the team in the league, given that they had, minus players at the start of the season. They were fielding, literally weakened teams in terms of numbers.
Yeah.
10 and 11 points respectively above Badshot Lee and Selsey to stay in the league. By the end of the season, they were, I think, statistically in better form than the teams above them. So, you have to hope that this is the start of the revival, but whichever way you look at it, if they're able to get back to, the glory days of being in the women's Premier Division and, to a lesser extent, the league below, Pedro and Shelley were a massive part of that. And in terms of stabilizing the ship, getting people back on board and really overcoming an incredible amount of challenges. So, I don't know what their work situation is. I'm led to believe that certainly Pedro had another job as well. I think I'm right in saying that.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So, really, massive thanks to those two. Haven't been as clued up as I probably should have with the women's team, but we've always tried to shine a light on what they've been doing. We've had Peter on, we've had Abby on.
Well, I was going to say, we'll invite Peter on again sometime this summer once, we have a little bit more news about what the direction with that team is, just to kind of, get his opinion on last season and how things ended. But you're right, they really turned it around. They didn't even have the same kind of players, playing for them all season. Oftentimes someone would show some quality and then get poached by one of the teams a little bit higher up in their division or even a division above at times. So I think we'll talk to Peter more. But for now, definitely, like Ben said, check out the article on the website.
Yeah, best wishes to those two departing the club, and we hope that your future endeavours are fruitful. As I said, if we're able to move up the leagues, you'll be a massive part of that. So thank you very much. They're probably not listening, but the point is there, I guess.
Yeah, the sentiment was nice though.
I wasn't looking for a point. I was looking for sentiment.
Yeah.
But we're going to move to the mailbag. It's quite a big one actually. It's quite a lot going on. So we're gonna get into that right now after this very short break. Right. This is actually quite a good one to start with. Dear sweet Tom Hill. I think he said he made his cricket debut in the week. He started playing cricket.
Oh, he's playing. I thought you meant he's writing for a rival fan site about cricket. And I was like, wait, what? But isn't that lovely? Dear sweet Tom Hill bowling down the green.
If you are watching the YouTube version of this, you will see the absolute scowl on Ross's face. So he's playing. Ugh.
Yeah, no. Well, it's like cricket. What is that? That's just like baseball, but up and down. It's not as much fun.
That's where we're at with cricket. That is where we're at with it. But Tom, hope your debut went well. Ross doesn't mean the face that he pulled.
Whatever. No, stick to football tactic. Don't play. No, I don't hope your debut went well. I hope it went poor, so you've got more time to write for the Tilehurst. That's not true. I hope it went okay. Whatever.
Well, anyway, his question is: are you for or against the return of slightly washed-up former players? Oof.
How washed up are they? Because like the thing is, right, I still really enjoyed Shane Long being here a few years ago. What did he do on the football pitch? But also we got to like chant at him a few times and I enjoyed that. You know, it was just nice to sort of celebrate him after the season. I think if we're trying to progress uphill, though, maybe not the way to go.
With the possible exception of Sam Smith, I don't think it ever works, and I don't think you should ever go back. I would imagine that he's probably referring to the rumours of Yaku Mete,
and see, there's where I would draw the line, because I don't think that's washed up to me. Like, I don't think that 2 years at another club where things are going horribly wrong at the other club, and necessarily reflects fully on the performance level of the player or what they're capable of still achieving, right? Like, I guess I think Yaku Mete could still do a job for Reading, personally, and I think that he'd be. I think that he'd be a fine replacement for Chem Campbell. I think that he'd more than replace his production, in my opinion.
I wouldn't have him back.
No, that's really interesting to me. I do love Yaku Mete. He was definitely one of my favorite players when he was here.
I tell you something, and how many times we've said this over the years, he is a lovely guy.
Yeah.
He is an absolutely spot on guy. And I think the way that he's been treated at Cardiff, or was treated at Cardiff, was pretty awful, to be honest. But they, as you said, they were a club in decline long before he arrived. And, they've had to cut cloth accordingly. The other one is Rinomota, who I probably would have back, but I don't think he massively suits our style of play at the moment.
He would be one that would fill, just if I'm, referring back to earlier, he would be maybe one who could maybe play wings position if needed, but again, a very different kind of player. I'd be more interested in Mete, personally. I'd be more interested in Mete. I think that Mete isn't necessarily the number one best option that we could look for out there. He shouldn't be like our number one pick, but he'd be a perfectly fine backup option. Like, if Yaku Mete is available to come off the bench for 30 minutes against tired, defenses and run straight at them, are you in League One? Are you turning that down? I'm not turning that down. Like, I think that's and we know what he's like, in the changing room. He loves the club. He loves the club. He knows the club.
You know what he's like in the changing room? Have you been in the changing room with him?
No, I haven't been in the changing room, but you remember all like the videos. Well, maybe all the kids hate all the videos where he's making them dance and stuff, but he always seemed to be one who could get the people going. I would take Yaku Mete back in a heartbeat. Genuinely, for the last 30 minutes of a League One game, right, where you're trying to break down a defense, like Yaku Mete running straight at them. Yes, please.
Like a bull in a china shop.
Like a bull in a china shop full of little bells that make a lot of noise.
It always makes me laugh, that saying, because why would a bull be in a china shop? Why would they go, of all the shops they could go into, why would they go, let's go in there?
Yeah, and also other shops would be just as bad. Like, you couldn't go into a Curry's. If you put a bull in a Curry's, it's going to do more damage, in terms of final cost per square meter, I think.
100%. The damage would be, it'd be vital.
A bull in a Curry's.
What about a fruit and Fred shop? Like, can you imagine that, tomatoes squashed everywhere or bananas split and everything? It'd be awful.
Running down a like old school market. Do they still have those in the high street? They have one in Tilehurst, a market.
No, they have a farmer's market still in Reading Town Centre. Well, on the edge of. Do they have a market in Tilehurst? And they have like craft markets and stuff at the brewery sometimes.
Okay.
But not like a traditional market.
I went to the farmer's market in Gorham last week and I was disappointed by how much I liked it. I was like, oh no, I fit right in here. I live in a town called Gorham. Do you know this? I think.
Oh, I did know that. Yeah, I thought you said Goring. I was like, what? You're over and he didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Goring's like 15 minutes down the road. Anyway, we digress. As a rule, I'm saying no, Tom. As a rule, you're saying
hell yeah. Oh god, yeah. 100. Genuinely, someone come and tell me who they would rather have on a free for the last 30 minutes of games. Like, don't get me wrong. Start someone who, like, I'm sitting here wearing a Femi Aziz shirt. Go and get somebody who is a bit younger, who can grow in this role and who can do whatever Noah Hunt, wants them to do. But like, I'm sorry, like the last 30 minutes of a League One game with 29-year-old Yaku Mete running at the fullback. I know he would like make mistakes and stuff. I know he would blast the ball over every now and again. Still scored a decent amount of goals pretty much every season he was with us. Yaku Mete, yes, please. This might get me in trouble. I'm realizing now. It seems like people are more on your side about this.
Yeah, is what it is, really. Lee Griffin, Lee's always chipping in. Thank you so much for your comments and your questions. Really, really appreciate that, Lee. Assuming it's free agents we're after, who would you go for to fill those vacant positions? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, Yaku.
Have you got? Did you not get the free agent list like I asked you to get up? Have you not got that up?
I don't have that up. No, sorry, I don't have
Well,
that.
I didn't send that text. How awkward! Like I'm
too busy looking up Yaku Mete's match logs from the last few seasons, so I can see how many goals he got for Reading in all of those years. Yeah, he got 12, 13, 12 for Reading, and then and then a poor season. Ignore that. But hey, bring back the glory days. That's who I'd bring in, Yaku Mete.
I think Luka Modric is available on free, isn't he?
Is Modric? I thought Modric signed for AC Milan, so I think so we're out of luck there, unfortunately. But yeah, Thomas Muller's available still, so we could go after him.
I'd probably sign Michael Craig.
Yeah, I think that's a really good. I think that's a really good question that we need to do a bit more prep for.
Can we come back to that, Lee? Is that all right? Basically, we're grossly unprepared for it. Absolutely.
Next week, Lee. What a good question you made, Lee. We get to prepare for these before time, but we didn't. So
yeah. I've written free agents in capital letters. That's going to be the basis of the next pod. Neptune O'Neill, who I really, really hope is related to Jacob Neptune, who is one of my favourite youth players currently. I don't know if you are, but if you are, you've done well. The youth teams have been the lifeblood of the team through recent years. With all the talk of signings, lack of them, how many from the under-21s will be breaking through this year? Listen, I've always said that one of the benefits to being in League One is the amount of cup games that you play. And the fact that you potentially get more FA Cup games as well. Obviously we didn't go all the way. We're never going to go all the way, but we had a good number of competitive games last year in the FA Cup. Same with the Virtue Trophy, and hopefully we can build a little bit of momentum in the League Cup this year, rather than exit the first round or whatever we normally do. I think that's a real positive. Despite the fact we've got 40 plus games to play, these competitive cup games are so much better than the under-21s, under-18s in terms of the pressure, but playing in a game that will potentially mean something. So
yeah, like it's a competitive game for the first team at the end of the day, even if you are playing against maybe weaker teams. But no, I think we had some good games in the in the Car Cup over the last few years. I think it's I do think it's done us some good at times for sure. And, I enjoyed beating Exeter 9-0 a few years ago. That was pretty fun too. So, yeah, I would agree with you completely. It's good to have this many games. I think that there are some players, the club has to do what's best for the club, but there is also a sense that this locker room has a good mentality about it right now. It has a good atmosphere about it, and you don't want to disrupt that too much, whereas again, like we're looking at Wickham and looking at Huddersfield as other teams that we feel are, in our bracket in terms of what kind of club we are and with expectations and where we are in League One and things. But, I don't think that they've had great atmospheres or great I don't think the vibe has been good in the locker room or whatever for the last little while, considering that they both fell off horribly in the back half of the season. They had things to change.
I know it's a bit of a warped situation, but obviously playing Hungerford on Saturday, there are going to be under-21s that come into the squad and well, realistically will start as well. I think it's going to be really interesting to see who is in that squad and who plays minutes, because whilst they can probably field a pretty strong first 11, this, if I'm a player in the under-21s, I want to be involved in that first pre-season game. So I want to be in the manager's mind. I want to be in the coaching, staff's mind and thinking, I've got Portsmouth coming up. I've got Basingstoke. I've got a couple of games behind closed doors against Oxford and Swindon. I've got Spurs. I want to be there or thereabouts. We went through that phase with, I think it was Nigel Adkins, where he was bringing through quite a lot of those youth players potentially. Aaron Cole, all those kind of players that he had at that time. I'm pretty sure it was Adkins. I can't. The years always bundle into one for me, but
yeah,
there was a
those
period of
ones
time where he went
especially.
through it. Yeah, and there was a lot of youth players that played in that pre-season, and then subsequently started to play in those early season games. So, if you're a player, you want to be involved in those opportunities and those games to play, basically. So yeah, we'll see what happens on Saturday against Hungerford Town. Mark, not panicking purely based on I can't do anything about the outcome and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I think the takeover saga panicked me out. We touched on this a little bit earlier. Ross. Are you panicking about where the club and the squad is at the moment, or are you like, still got 2 months, mate?
No, that was weird.
So I just do the whole thing again. I keep pressing
the whole thing again. Go for it.
We touched on this a little bit earlier, really, didn't we, Ross, about panicking and not panicking? Where are you on the line? Are you panicking? Not panicking? Are you panicking about panicking? Like, where are you kind of at, given that we've got still 2 months to finalise a squad that's going to see us through, well, at least until January?
Look, before we got on here, I don't think it, we were kind of talking about this in our chat, obviously, with Sim and the other guys at the Tilehurst, and I think that my sense before we spoke was kind of, there's nothing to panic about. This is just Twitter nonsense, as oftentimes things are with online, with just like online fandom. And I do think that there is a sense that we could all do with touching grass every now and again, just going outside, not worrying about, like, if you're going to get yourself wound up on social media, you only have yourself to blame, really. I'm not panicking, but I think I can understand now, from having looked at some other clubs, that there are some things that you may have, hoped that we would have done by now. And I do understand also that the nature, as we spoke about earlier, the nature in which, Kuwig likes to speak means that people will interpret that as, we're going to do everything right this second. I think that also, though, we should remember that we have an opportunity now as a fan base to have learned from the last few years and to, kind of allow the club and the staff and all that a little bit of grace with regards to getting their, feet back under the table and everything. Look, even I have a lot of hope for this new era of Reading, but I am not expecting to, whenever we do the season prediction in a month or so, I'm not predicting us to finish in automatic promotion next season. I think that would have been a bridge too far for me. I think I said a few weeks ago when the takeover was done, is that for me, now the goal is get out of League One within 3 years. And so that's kind of still where in my head I'm at. I understand that is a bit dull and, the bit patient. But I just think that if we want to, is the goal to just get promoted into the championship right away and just be there for a season and get relegated? No, the goal is to build, sustainably, and then be, positioned to become a club in the championship that are able to stay there for a few years and then even push on further from there, to build a base from which we can build, all the bells and whistles around us that get us into the championship, but have a base that can keep us in the championship too. I think that long-term planning takes long-term planning, basically. So yeah, I'm not panicking right now. I think that I'm very excited about Joe Jacobson and just kind of seeing where he could take the club. And for me, we have a really young director of football and a really young manager now in Hunt and Jacobson. And I'm just kind of excited to see where they can take the club over the next few years. But again, with some patience in thinking that this should be long-term planning. This shouldn't be get yourself promoted on this by the skin of your teeth and then get relegated and be in shambles because your squad is bloated with players that you needed to try and stay up in the championship. So yes, I could understand wanting to do more, but no, I'm not panicking at all when I look at the long-term picture.
I think that was where I was at with the 1 year deals, because actually they're risk-free for us. If they, I'm trying to be negative, but let's take Yeardon. Say he gets injured in, game
week 3.
Well, 3. I was trying. Yeah, okay. And he's not played for the rest of the season. it's very, very low risk, but possible high return for us. Same with the other players that have signed for the year. So that's kind of, for me, I heard people say it doesn't show a lot of faith, but no one's holding a gun to those players' heads in terms of signing them. And also, like, it is part of a rebuild in terms of, as you said, you don't want to commit to these players until you know what they can do and how much they're going to play and how well they are, because all of those players have had injury problems. To my knowledge, all of them have had quite significant ones, and have been sort of in and out of the squad because of that. So I think that's a really good point, and not bloating the squad and just being really careful with that recruitment and going, look, great. The next alternative is that you get another year, 2 years, or whatever after this one. So that's
what you just said. I think relates to Dorset really nicely too, because I think that like he's a player that maybe a year ago we would have thought, yes, sign him up again right away, just have that player on the books. But yes, he's had a really bad injury in the last year, and you never know how a person's body is going to react to the rigors of playing a full season after that's happened. But on the other hand, on the flip side of that, the exciting thing is that we've got a player who really wants to be at Reading based on what he's saying, and needs to go out and prove it this year, and needs to go out and get himself, a 2 or 3 year contract after this year. So I think that only bodes well for the motivation level of Reading's players who are still here.
On the note of panicking, Michael Hunter, I think some fans do not want any opinions from other fans. They want to stay panic free. Drawn to water. No cause for panic. We've got Legerwood in midfield, Gilks on the wing, and Hunt up front. It's quite interesting way of looking at it, really.
Who was that?
That was Drawn to water.
That's really good. That's funny.
It's good.
I like that.
One, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think the fan base has been a very, very sensitive period, over the last few years, and I think one of the things that brought us all together was the fact we all wanted Die Young out. And now that he's gone, it's like, well, what's keeping us together apart from supporting the club, which should be enough. But we know in football it never is, and opinions are part and parcel of the game. So I think there's a little bit of that going on at the moment for sure. Finish up with Tom Sheeran, who is a regular contributor to the mailbag. Thank you, Tom. Not personally a fan of bringing back ex-players. Whatever Ross said just now, it means he's an idiot.
I knew there's going to be someone this wasn't going to work for. I really do realize I've got myself in trouble. Sorry.
Yeah, I added the bit about you being an idiot in there.
Wow.
He didn't say that. Yeah. But he said, I agree, we've lost some character in that dressing room, which is how we got through previous years. Personally, I'm not worried about the current squad numbers. These are new and exciting times. Expecting a playoff push this season. I'd agree with that. I'm not particularly worried at this stage. I'm also expecting a playoff push. I think we're capable of that. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for top two, but we get into the playoffs. That is literally improvement, year on year,
right.
Level. So I don't see any reason why the squad that we're building, shouldn't be as a recruitment remit. We're looking to the playoffs at least. So, that will be interesting to see if we can do that. I'm anticipating a good season, as I'm sure a lot of people are, but it's just about getting those numbers through the door and getting the quality through the door as well to put it all together. We're gonna move to a preview, very short preview, but we're still going to do that anyway. So we're going to take a very short break, and then we'll be back with the preview. Alrighty, final part of episode 422 in association with ZC Said Films and the Amazons. Hungerford Town live at 3 p.m. at Bullpit Lane. Not a million miles away from Reading, of course. Tickets are going pretty quickly, so if you're going, you need to get on wegottickets.com. You can just search it. You can go on their social media or go through their website, but tickets are going pretty quickly. Never been to the ground, but Hungerford itself is decent place. They put out a post yesterday. Did you know that a train from Reading to Hungerford takes just 40 minutes, and there are 5 arriving on Saturday morning before kickoff of the Hungerford Town v Reading FC friendly? Why not arrive early and enjoy our amazing town? Why not?
Why not? They even mentioned the town in the team name, so it must be worth going to. They're called
Exactly.
Hungerford Town, you know. So I like Bulpit name as a name too. By the way, that's pretty good.
It's good. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
good one. That I like a proper team, you know, a proper stadium name, not the Jimmy Sweets Paint Stadium. You know, whatever. Moving on.
Anyone going to the game via public transport, train, you're looking at platform 8. One change. Don't know where that is, but it's a change. Yeah, as I said, it takes about 40 minutes or so. Just drop my phone. It's not good, is it?
Jordan,
yeah, look, I mean, I think these are.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Jordan, is it Ebe or Ibe? I think it's Ibe. I don't even know. Ex-Liverpool player, only 29 years old, played for Liverpool, Bournemouth, then went on a bit of an adventure. But yeah, plays for Hungerford Town now. So get your tickets.
What is interesting about this is it's not a Reading 11. It's just Reading. So you would expect to see a lot of those first team players involved. It is literally right on the border of West Berkshire.
Okay.
So
nice little July trip.
Yeah, exactly. I think the maximum you're going to pay is £10. Match day prices for adults are £10. Okay. Under 16 to £5. Obviously, if you get them online in advance, I think there's £2 difference. So yeah, look, it's not a bad chat. It seems really early to actually physically go and watch a team play a pre-season.
It feels like we finished the season 2 minutes ago, doesn't it? It doesn't feel like it's time for another game. Hey, so I'll ask you this question just a second, but the player I'm most excited to see in this game, and I might not even get to see it anyway, just because it might, probably won't be broadcast. But the player I would be most excited to see would be Ben Elliott.
Yeah, 100%.
He missed a significant amount of time obviously last season, but when he did play, looked like a player who could do something that nobody else in the team could do, and that was drive from a build-up position to just outside of the the opponent's box or the third, with some speed and directness that kind of pulled apart defenses, pulled the seams between the fullback and the center back apart really nicely as well. So yeah, I'd be excited to see Ben Elliott play. I would expect that a lot of the first teamers, like you say, will play, and I expect to see Lewis Wing and Harvey Nibbs for a half maybe. I think a lot of what this is a good chance for us to experiment with is I think like we've talked about, the front line is not as strong as the midfield and the defense at the moment. So a lot of this will be, can the current academy forwards play with the first team midfielders? Can they make runs that result in chances and things like that with those players? And then if they do, can they finish them? So I think for a lot of the defense and the midfield, it will be a case of getting some minutes in the legs and more of the same from last season. But for the strikers, for the forwards, it's kind of interesting because it's a chance for them to see if they can operate with a pretty established midfield at Reading.
Yeah, I think it will be, as much as these things are based on performance and I hate the phrase, but getting minutes in the tank. Like they've never played a game of football before.
I like minutes in the legs. That's what I like. I always say that, but tank works too.
It just makes me laugh because that kind of phrase, if you like, conjures up images of them just going off to Ibiza for 4 weeks and just all inclusive.
That's fair. That's fair. It is interesting. They are still training a little bit, but it's not the same, is it? It's really interesting. So there's, I'll try and find his name and put it on Bluesky, but there's a player who plays for Detroit City over here, who are a USL team. I actually saw them a few weeks ago, which was cool. But he is also a YouTuber, and he basically does like a whole bunch of stuff on like the life of a football player, at that level, very low level, and then talks about like his training, routines and things like that. And he's got one video where he's doing a workout with one of the other players on the team, and he's talking to him, it's right after the season finished not that long ago, and he's talking about getting back into preseason training or whatever. He says, how long did you wait? He said, all right, well, the trainer told me 2 weeks, so I waited 1 week. And then they both say something to the same extent where they're like, we got back into it as quickly as we could, because they were saying if you wait even 2 weeks, the amount of like fitness that you lose as like a player who's playing at that level is amazing. Like it suddenly like can take weeks to get back to the same level of fitness that you had. So yeah, just getting those minutes in early. It does sound silly. I agree. Whether they're going into the tank or the legs, it sounds silly, but it is necessary.
Sounds like the sort of thing you would say where people run with their legs.
They do run with. Well, he's gone now. He ran with his little legs all the way over to QPR, the lying scoundrel.
Yeah, well, I was going to say something a bit stronger than that, but I won't. Yeah, Scoundrel's good. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
That just about wraps up episode 422 for you. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed the pods that we've done this summer. We're keeping going. Took a little break purely because there wasn't really too much to chat about. We're still trying to get some guests on, hoping that we can get some people through the door on that and confirm for you over the next few weeks and month before the preseason start or the preseason ends and the proper season starts. Hungerford Town on Saturday away. If you go and enjoy it, we'll be back next week to recap the Hungerford Town. I'm going to keep saying Hungerford Town, the game.
Just a nice little name of a town, isn't it? Really, just works quite. Yeah, Hungerford Town. What a nice little July friendly.
And then we've got Gillingham away the following Saturday. So yeah, the games are coming now. Hopefully a bit more news on the transfer market. Only a few more players that we can focus in on. We're going to do free agents next time. We'll do free agents next time, I think, and see what we potentially could do. And go from there. Have a really good week, everybody. Hope you're coping in the heat. Ross, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed being in your garden for this podcast very much. Watch on YouTube. Where you get your good YouTube videos, i.e. YouTube.
Available in all good video rental stockists or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I put these out in VHS.
Yeah. God, VHS. Remember them. Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, have a good week, everybody. Take care and come on, you Oz.